This is episode 282. In the news this week, just wanted to quickly mention that April, Masonic Ten, is somewhat around the corner, but it's going to be just fantastic and really looking forward to it. We're going to have a really great esoteric panel discussion with a special moderator, Brother John Ruar. I'll be on that panel as well as Brother Greg Kaminsky, Frater O, and a few others. So it's going to be really cool. There's going to be wall-to-wall vendors and some great places to expand your horizons Masonically. The cost? It's free. Where is Masonic Ten? Well, it's being hosted by Ezekiel Bates Lodge out in Attleboro, Massachusetts. Masonic Ten is going to be April 29th, 2017, 9 to 5 on a Saturday. Ezekiel Bates Lodge, AFNAM. You can go to eb1870.org for more information. It's going to be pretty cool. They've got a neat little video up, and you can check that out on their website. Angel Miller, myself, we've got Richard Casero, Ryan Flynn, the Setting Mall Study Circle, Greg Kaminsky, and the Occult Personality Podcast, Brothers Blend Coffee, the New England Grotto Association, the Massachusetts Masonic Education and Training Committee, the Masonic Light Podcast, Masonic Scarves, the Craftsman's Journey, Alter Ego Clothing Company, the Historical Light Podcast. It's going to be really amazing, and you're not going to have enough time to do everything you want to do. That's how busy it's going to be. But nonetheless, I am super stoked. Other news. I just couldn't leave well enough alone, and I kept messing around with the website. So if you were checking it out over the last week or so and you kept noticing some wonky stuff happening on the website, weird links that didn't go anywhere, and names to links that weren't pertinent or relevant to the website, you're not crazy. I was just really messing around with the website. I think I finally landed on something I liked, which I try to change it up every year or two so it stays fresh. And I had a kind of an okay design, but it felt a little cluttered, and a couple brothers went ahead and they told me, yeah, dude, it feels a little cluttered. So I got that confirmation or that affirmation that I was feeling correct. So went ahead and kind of changed it up. I think it's pretty good now. Mobile still needs a little bit of work, so I do apologize if mobile feels kind of weird for you, if words get cut off or whatever. Try checking it out in landscape mode on your phones. Tablets, it should load just fine. It's just portrait mode on certain phones that looks kind of weird. This week, we're going to start off with a paper and then go into the first segment of Masonic 10 for 10. That is where I have solicited 10 worshipful masters who are sitting worshipful masters from around the country, and I connected with them to get their opinions on 10 random Masonic questions. And we didn't edit these, so I didn't edit responses. I didn't, for the most part, edit anything in these segments. I wanted the information to flow from these sitting worshipful masters to you, the listeners, and hopefully what you get out of it is another viewpoint and perhaps some affirmation for yourselves about what you're feeling. And I started off this segment with a few brothers in mind, and I essentially had to fill 7 spots. I have no doubt this segment is going to be very popular, and there are times in which the answers are from these masters you're not going to like all the time. They might upset you. They might make you super happy. We don't know. But the first sitting worshipful master I asked was a great friend of mine, Brother Scott Dueball, who's written for the Midnight Freemasons and has really done a wonderful job with his lodge, where he's a sitting master for the 2nd year in a row. They were having some challenges at that lodge, and all the officers decided, let's do 2 years to get stable. And that's what they did, and they're really following through. I think you're all going to look forward and really like this conversation we had with worshipful Brother Scott Dueball. Before we get into that, we have a piece for you. So let's go ahead and get started. So this first piece is by myself. It's a piece that I wrote just a couple weeks ago, and we featured on the Midnight Freemasons. And it got a pretty good response, and I figured we would go ahead and read it and see what you guys think. It's called What Freemasonry Teaches We Don't Know, by Midnight Freemason contributor, Right Worshipful Brother Robert H. Johnson. We start off with a quote. What facts, theory, or doctrine does the Grand Lodge expect the Committee on Masonic Information to inculcate? The Grand Lodge has not said, obviously, it is not to teach what is in the ritual for that is already thoroughly taken care of. What is the Grand Lodge's authorized and approved version of the history of Freemasonry? It has none, except what is found in the ritual. What is the Grand Lodge's interpretation of the symbolism of Freemasonry? It hasn't any, except the ritual. What is the doctrine of the Grand Lodge about the philosophy, religion, or principles of Freemasonry? Obviously nothing except what is already taught in the ritual. Therefore, if your committee circulates any information at all, it must be in addition to the only authorized doctrine of the Grand Lodge, vis-a-vis the ritual. Hence, we have the anomaly of a committee officially and solemnly authorized to disseminate unauthorized materials." End quote. These words are from the Committee on Masonic Information, formerly Education, under the Grand Lodge of the State of California in the Proceedings for 1947, page 206. What is outlined is something we all know deep down, but have very little patience or stomach to digest. This idea that what we have has no meaning outside the ritual. This is stated by numerous Grand Lodges all around the world, if not in print, then certainly by inaction. There is an inherent ideology which prevents a lodge, or a Grand Lodge in the United States at least, from stating that any one symbol means anything concrete. Sure, we offer new members small pamphlets on our history, who some famous Masons were, and outlined a few rules a Mason should live by. And if you're extremely lucky, there might be an allusion to some deeper concepts. Hence the mystery of our origins before recorded proceedings, the mystery of our operative ancestors, and innumerable tomes of speculation regarding the teachings, what they mean, and why we do them are readily available to anyone to read, open for further speculation and writing, even by those without the slightest expertise. We only have printed and documented proof of our existence, which is tainted at times, and in some cases anecdotal evidence by second and third source parties. The documented history of Freemasonry, therefore, has had the most credible and accurate writings. But our craft isn't about teaching its modern history. If it were, our first brethren would be studying what they had literally just accomplished. It is supposed to be a, quote, peculiar system of morality, veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. End quote. Or in other words, a different system of a way of living, taught with stories and depicted through pictures or symbols. But what are these teachings? Is it simply love for all mankind, faith in God, and hope in an afterlife? Almost no one agrees that it is as simple as this. Authors such as Manly P. Hall, Arthur Edward Waite, Blavatsky, Doyle, Pirtle, Pottinger, Steinmetz, Krieger, and a slew of other writers living today argue that there is indeed a deep symbolism of these degrees. Ideas vary from author to author, but suffice it to say that the main takeaway is that Freemasonry is truly ancient, perhaps antediluvian in nature. It teaches the idea of a perfection of man or apotheosis. It teaches that there is a secret doctrine, and that the absolute practice of these realized concepts within the mind of an initiate leads to a true spiritual awakening to something commonly referred to as the cosmic consciousness. These concepts are truly mind-boggling to some. They are even offensive to others, especially when these ideas clash with the religious theology of a person so reading it. It can create deep division of the mind if one is a Freemason, who is of the persuasion of a theology which is incompatible with these seemingly enlightened ideas, and is reading these texts. One tends to shut down in these instances. We call this cognitive dissonance, an inconsistency in thought patterns regarding information put to the reader. It's too convenient to keep believing the wrong information than it is to subject yourself to the new information that's been presented, whether factual, historical record, or perhaps peer-reviewed scholarly written esoterica. But what do we know? There is nothing out there which affirms that these posited ideas of our actual purpose are absolute. We know for certain our craft has innumerable made-up concepts to deal with the many areas we cover. Look at the Masonic ring. It might have, as a design, 3 etches on each side. When the buyer asks if this is because it symbolizes the 3 degrees, the seller says yes, but to be sure, it was actually just designed that way. No symbolism intended at all. Somehow, we feel a need to fill in the gaps. It's the way our minds work. The landmarks of Freemasonry are a prime example of creating something that was non-existent. They were written based on loose ideas presented in any one of the diverse manuscripts which exist for your intimate perusal. These are as ancient as the 1800s, when Mackey and others laid them out for the first time. Again, we have a human need to organize, write down, reference, and categorize everything. There are those who claim our Freemasonry's origin is from ancient Egypt, and much has been written about this. However, there are also scholars who claim that this is absolute nonsense, that we came from the descendants of Noah. Again, nonsense. Why nonsense? Because there is no factual historical record to be examined. Where we came from lends to the credibility of what we are said to teach. An example: if we came from ancient Egypt, then perhaps we would truly value the magical elements of ritual. If we came from ancient Greece, perhaps we would value more the sacred geometry. The question remains, what does Freemasonry teach? Certainly, Grand Lodges refrain from taking a stance on what it is. We wouldn't want to alienate hundreds of thousands of members. So we're left with the maxim of Freemasonry is many things to a great many people. This just isn't satisfying, and perhaps it is the reason for all the appended bodies. Believers of certain paths can join up and get active in one or several other quote-unquote Masonic groups dedicated to theosophical ideologies, or perhaps just to have a social club. Certainly, brethren, we are more than faith, hope, and love. We should indeed admit to ourselves that the esoteric ideas, which are written of our craft, which are not so much authorized interpretations shared by Grand Lodge, are most likely the product of Renaissance and Enlightenment period members joining our ranks and influencing the direction of the craft. For in our fraternity was a safe haven for these free thinkers, these titans of philosophy and romantic chroniclers. It is thanks to these members that we have a craft left at all, a craft whose documented origin is that of operative, that is, actual stonemasons and their guilds, in which obligations were taken over the guild's bylaws, not its holy book. From this we sprang forth, a society whose chief concern was that of unity. An influx of free thinkers then came into the craft and changed it forever. This fraternity is in a constant state of change. In the end, we teach ritual. We teach how to make a square corner, hold your rod, and how to memorize words. You forgot a word in there. You did a back hook step instead of a prep step. We've heard it all, haven't we? The ritual vultures leave no ritual uncorrected. If we only teach ritual, then what is the supposition? If there's nothing deeper, what is the point? If you argue that the ritual teaches something else, then what is it? And why hasn't it been officially stated? To be sure, there are some Grand Lodges which have made tantalizing statements in the materials given to the members. See the Illinois Grand Lodge Committee on Masonic Education's Intender Guide, the Master Mason Degree Proficiency Booklet, page 10. Quote, "The symbol of the temple for each of us is founded upon the idea that man himself is a living temple, where the supreme architect of the universe resides." End quote. This has since been removed. The new version of the Illinois Intender program negates this concept completely, and yet we ask, what are we teaching? Are we not teaching these things any longer? Apparently not, which is why so many young Masonic authors are taking it upon themselves to dive into such topics. A matter of grave importance comes with these newly discovered ancient ideas, notwithstanding is an unyielding strong grip on reality. Too often a brother may dive into the depths of Masonic philosophy, only to risk nothing less than one's own sanity in the search for divine truth. Perhaps if our lodges were to develop a posture on the philosophy of Freemasonry as it relates to enlightenment and not just the ordinary perpetuated concepts, we would foster developed thinkers, attract new members, provide a safe place for study and discussion, and be a nucleus for the progressive ideas to be born, which the rest of humanity might eventually look to for direction. Brethren, what are we teaching? Officially. Alright, so those are just some of my thoughts and kind of frustrations in regards to what we're teaching in Freemasonry today. There just really isn't a whole lot out there that's solid and concrete, but we are trying. New members are coming in every day and will surprise us with what they already know, and they quickly become SMEs, or subject matter experts. So, I know you've been waiting for it. Let's get right into the 10 for 10 with Worshipful Brother Scott Dueball. So we were having breakfast, and we just about started the questions when breakfast arrived. Your name, your lodge, and number, and under whose jurisdiction do you fall?
Yeah, so I'm Scott Dueball, Worshipful Master of DC Brigadier Lodge number 81, under the jurisdiction of Grand Lodge of Illinois.
All right, man, are you ready for your 10 questions?
Sure.
Holy shit.
2 sides of bacon.
All right.
Here's one of them. Cheesy hash browns,
He's got the hash browns and the cakes.
side of bacon, and
Yep.
then 49er fries.
Holy cow.
You guys anything else right now?
I felt like we were being judged when she said, I have your 2 sides of bacon.
All right, so we're eating breakfast over these questions, but what is the one thing you love about Freemasonry most? These can be long answers or short answers. I don't really care if they're long or short.
So the easy answer is the mixture of people. I've always been fascinated with how you have people who do different things, who live totally different lives, and are still fascinated by the same philosophy that I'm fascinated by. And so my lodge has retired police officers, it has engineers, it has logistics, and whatever you call that, people in the logistics field.
Sure.
Gas station owner. I've got a buddy who's a taxi cab driver that's in a lodge I'm a member of. Like all those different types of people who live totally different lives come together on a Thursday night, and for one reason. Pretty cool.
Why are you the worshipful master? Now listen close. This is where Brother Scott Dueball has a moment of hesitation before he reveals something that I found to be absolutely true and kind of a shocking answer. It's something that hits at the core of all of us. These would be, I said these were going to be weird questions.
Yeah. So the obvious answer is because there's no one else. And I don't think there's probably a lot of lodges who are in a similar position in there's only a handful of people who haven't already been the master, and from that handful, there's only a few people who have the time, have the ambition, and have the drive. But all those things aside, you still have to make a decision to do that. You know, no one's forcing me to be the master, nor will they force anyone else after me. You know, people will step up and will take the position, but to me it's important to serve the organization, to serve the fraternity, if I expect it to last. And that's something that has always been a part of, that's the way my parents raised me, that if I'm going to be a part of something, I need to be willing to contribute in all the ways that the organization need that contribution.
Where do you go for inspiration?
So sometimes I'm inspired by the older books. You know, I find, like I said, the beauty of Masonry is that you have all these different types of people at one time who all are buying into the same philosophical journey. But you go back 50 years or you go back 100 years, and there were more people buying into the same journey. And so it's fascinating to me when I start to go back to some of these older texts, even if they're 20 years old, and these people are talking about the same things. That to me is really inspiring. And then I think it's hard as far as locations, because you go two ways with that question, right? You go like, where do I pull inspiration out of, and what types of places do I go to be inspired?
Right.
And I think you have to work to find that, to look for that inspiration wherever you're at. So you can go to the Botanic Gardens and find that inspiration. Or you go to the rough parts of the rough neighborhoods in the city and find totally different inspiration, but inspiration nonetheless.
What's the worst part about being the worshipful master to you? And then, what do you think it is to the members of your lodge? It's an introspective question.
So let me get clarification in that second part.
Okay.
What
do you think the worst part about you being the worshipful master of your lodge, in that, is there something that you expect out of them that they aren't a big fan of?
Yeah, so the first part is real easy. Being the master is kind of a lonely spot because you are the sole source of direction. In my opinion, in a properly functioning Masonic lodge, you are the sole source of direction for everything that goes on. You're the first and last word on everything. And that's lonely because everyone's looking at you. They're kind of looking up towards your chair, wondering what you want to do. And not everyone always agrees with you. And so you end up having to be pretty confident in your directions and in your thoughts and the way things go. And so for me, yeah, I feel like no one else understands what I'm going through at this exact minute as the worshipful master. And I can't, it's really unfair for me to expect anyone to understand that. If you're in my lodge, in a lot of ways, is trying to turn the ship around a bit or redirect the barge is the way I kind of describe it. And I'm asking for a lot from a lot of people. And I know that. And I know that everyone has kids and everyone has other hobbies and maybe more than one job or other things going on in their life. But my only care is the lodge. And that's when I was installed, that's what they told me. Your only responsibility is to make sure that the lodge is taken care of. So, unfortunately, I can only have limited amounts of empathy towards the other aspects of everyone's life. I'm solely focused on driving the lodge to where I think we need to go.
What is technology's place in the craft today?
We're terrible, and maybe we've always been terrible at communication, but from top to bottom, every appendant body, just about every craft lodge, we're all bad at communication. And in a world that communicates on the fly right now, that's an opportunity as well as a limitation. Like, we need to be improving our communication, and there are lots of ways to do that.
So if you take away all the prerequisites it takes to become a Mason, regardless of your jurisdiction, generally they're the same. But if you take all of those things away, who's our target? Who's our target member?
So it's tricky because I think that different craft lodges can have a different focus and have a different target. But my own assessment would be we're looking at mid-20s to mid-40s. Someone who potentially has a family, someone who certainly values those sort of relationships, but also has some introspective aspects, something where maybe that's religion, maybe it's something on the lines of religion, but I think that those are the biggest things. If that's of no value to you, you're going to have a hard time, I think, deriving value out of the organization.
Define a successful lodge meeting, and know that the next question is define a shitty lodge meeting.
That one's probably going to be a lot easier.
I think so.
Because I think you can have success in a lot of different ways. But recently I've talked a lot about fulfillment, and a lot of the conversations I'm having with what I would probably term as the more enlightened brothers in our area talks to fulfillment and making sure that people are getting the fulfillment that they need to then leave lodge and become useful members of society and a benefit to society. And that fulfillment can be a whole bunch of things, but I think we can define what's not very fulfilling a lot easier. But I might say some examples would be education, a meeting that's focused on education or discussion or discourse. Obviously the degrees, I don't want to discount the value that they have, but that's not really a part of the stated meetings. But yeah, it's a lot easier to define the things that we do right now in our meetings that are not very fulfilling.
Like what?
So communications, reading minutes, all those things have a certain level of importance, but I don't think that the average brother, if we have 130 people on our roster for our lodge, I don't think that 125 of them get the fulfillment out of hearing those things read in lodge, hearing the treasurer's report, the past minutes, those sort of discussions about how we should repair the building, discussions about the next pancake breakfast. Those things don't impact at least 125 of our brothers. And unfortunately, that's why we don't see 125 people at our meetings every month.
So I want to pull the thread a little bit on that then. Your main attended meeting is your stated business meeting, where it's intended to handle business. So how do we change the dynamics so that the expected high attendance meeting is a meeting that doesn't have those things that put interest into the deficit? Like, what if we had 2 stated meetings a month? One is business, one is education, or like fellowship. So then you would have to actually change some of the perception in that everybody's like, it's 1 meeting a month, but like we've built that so huge and everybody knows it isn't. But then if you were to change it to say, okay, it's 2, and one of them is nothing but fellowship and education, would that be the more attended meeting?
Yeah, I don't know. Because we do fellowship stuff, and that doesn't always bring out that largest chunk of folks. I think what I try to do is frame it as on the average, I'm looking for 6 hours a month from the members who want to be active. And I think you can't really change the perspectives that have been ingrained in the members over the past 20 years and beyond. I only use 20 years because the members that I interact with, most of them have only been active for a maximum of 25 years. But I don't think you can change their perspective on it. I think when you bring new people in, that's your opportunity to change the perspective. That's your opportunity to explain, this is what we need from you. This is what you're going to get out of it, and make sure that you're delivering the experience that those guys are looking for.
So this one might be controversial. What is the worst Masonic offense you've ever witnessed? You don't have to give names, obviously. We'd encourage you not to. And then how did you deal with that? I should preface this by jurisdictional differences withstanding. There are certain things that we all agree we're not going to do. That's into consideration.
Yeah, something that stuck with me was an experience where before someone tried to understand what another guy had been through earlier on in his life, they immediately jumped to making a judgment call on that guy, and they went right up to the top and had him pushed out of the organization. And I think that changed my experience or my view on a lot of things when we start to have conversations about convictions and stuff like that. So I don't know. That's not the best. It's not going to be the best sound clip. But so what happened was a good friend of mine that found out he had committed a felony or been convicted of a felony earlier in his life, and there was some misunderstanding about how to write that on the application. People were misled, and they had the guy kicked out rather than going, well, what happened here, and trying to approach him as a brother who had clearly turned his life around. Those people I'm still in contact with a lot of these people that were involved, but that's certainly changed the way that I view people or guys applying for membership who have convictions on their record, and I think it was a raw deal. That's the extent of it.
So, last question for you. Again, differences in jurisdictions, putting that out there. Here in Illinois, we have a very interesting way that candidates prove proficiency moving from degree to degree. And largely, it's by the interpretation of the current master, but currently or grandmaster, I should say. So like currently in Illinois, in order to pass on to the next degree, you have to either have completed the long form catechism and return it in open lodge, or by committee. If you want a proficiency certificate later, at the end of all this, it has to be an open lodge in front of everybody. There is the short form for your first and second degree that you can return. There is no third degree proficiency short form, it's only long form. That's how you get your certificate. And then there is the provision that through the intender program, your instructor or your intender can tell the master that you've essentially done the work, you understand what happened in the degree, you know the signs, the words, tokens, passes, all that stuff. He's ready for the next degree. And then the master just schedules it. In Pennsylvania, you just wait 1 month in between degrees. There's nothing. In your mind, if you could make the rule, what is the benchmark for moving from EA to fellow craft to master mason? What's that benchmark for you?
So I want to make sure that the candidates or the brothers progressing are actually reflecting on these things. And so we've got...
Define the things.
What's included in the degree, and more specifically the proficiency. I think it's a little unfortunate that those guys don't get copies of the lectures, and so all they really have to go off of is what's in their proficiency or whatever someone's going to take the time to sit down and go through. But one of the things that we're working on in my lodge is we got a couple of guys who are going to do proficiency this week, but I've asked them to also stand up and give specific examples of how the lessons from the first degree have already begun to change them and how they've already started to use those teachings, because that is the way that reflection is the way that you really improve yourself. And I think the idea that you have to rush through the 3 degrees and then you can start to apply those things, which whether it's spoken or unspoken, that's by and large how we do things. I think that doesn't work. I think that you can sit down, you can force this improvement kind of at what we call at work a stage gate kind of process, where you make sure that you've applied the entered apprentice lessons before you're prepared to move on to the fellow craft. Of course, Mailing P. Hall talks a lot about this and making sure that you've done the reflection. And in Lost Keys, he has a specific bulleted list of what you need to be focused on in the entered apprentice degree, what you need to be focused on in the fellow craft degree. So that to me is more important. I don't know that we have a way to monitor that, but I think we need masters and lodges who are on board with enforcing that, and fine with letting you wait a little bit longer if you're not ready or if they feel like you're not quite ready. I don't know.
So you lay out something interesting there in that you said these are the things that we need to do because this is what the degrees teach, but nothing is prescribed by a Grand Lodge. They have no stance except what's in the ritual. And there's this blind belief that memorization of words equals understanding. I mean, that might have been true at some point, but I just don't see that anymore. But I like where you're going.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the one risk when you start to look at legislation from a Grand Lodge level is...
And right here, Scott says something interesting, and that he calls out something that we all feel, but then immediately follows it up with something else that hits to the heart of us, something we don't want to realize, our own cognitive dissonance. Let's listen in.
They're so afraid of impacting that top line membership number. And anything that they're going to do that's going to either potentially slow that growth, it's not really growth. Let's all be honest. It's not growth. But potentially slow bringing in new people, they're not going to pull the trigger on it. And I don't necessarily fault them for that, but I do fault the lodges for not being able to understand the bigger picture, to learn about the craft, to learn about what the craft is and what it needs, and then make decisions that are going to develop your lodge. And sometimes pumping the brakes is what the lodges need.
Thanks very much, Scott.
Sure.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that. That's it for this week. Please remember to find us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. If you'd like to support this show, please go on over to the website, wcypodcast.com, and hover over that Support the Show tab and click on one of the links there. So if you click on Buy a Pin, you can, of course, buy a pin. You can buy cufflinks or a money clip or a tie bar. You can click Where to Shop, which will take you to some really great retailers that we have set up exclusive deals with for you to get special discounts, which would include buybankersbest.com, onit.com, both who have great deals with us. buybankersbest.com gives us 20% off of all of your orders by using a promo code BBWCY357. And if you go to onit.com, you can get 10% off by using the promo code WCY. And just want to say thanks to everybody who does that shopping. Also, you can click make a direct donation. So whether you donate 50 cents or $5, it all goes back into the production of this show, and it is all funded by you guys. So for the first year and a half of the show, I flipped the bill for everything, and it became quickly kind of clear that I wasn't going to be able to do that forever. So because of that, we started fundraising efforts, and largely you guys have become the producers of this show. It's just why our tagline is kind of this idea of listener-supported education, and we really appreciate that. We're always listening to your suggestions. Anybody who is just started following us on Facebook knows that I am constantly asking for opinions. I am constantly asking what you guys want to hear more about. It's why we have new segments coming all the time. It is something that is a great honor and privilege to bring to everybody out there, and I really appreciate all of the assistance. What do you get sometimes? So sometimes we try to give back a little bit. We have the remastered Manly P. Hall lectures, which I believe we remastered 26 Manly P. Hall lectures, which we remastered in 320 kilobyte dual channel stereo audio. This is better than CD quality. We've removed the white noise in the background. You can hear Hall like never before. We did that all for free, myself and Brother Gerald Brown, who assisted. And if you click on the From Us to You and remastered Manly P. Hall lectures, click on the picture of Hall. It'll take you to a Google Drive where you can download them all for free. And of course, please visit the 300 Years of Freemasonry celebration. So you can click the link on WCYpodcast.com, or you can go direct to theMasonicRoundtable.com/300. This is huge. Nothing about this is small. The build up to the 300th anniversary of the forming of the United Grand Lodge of England has been a long time in the making, and just now, as it's mere months away, have people all of a sudden got real about this thing. Grand Lodges are scrambling to put on events. Valleys are scrambling to put on events. But you know who didn't scramble to put on an event? The Masonic Roundtable. Myself, John Ruark, Jason Richards, Juan Sepulveda, all pulled together over a year ago to start planning this. We rented out the George Washington Masonic Memorial, a national memorial. We rented out for a whole day. That isn't cheap, but this isn't something that happens every year, guys. This is huge. 300 years of Freemasonry in an organized fashion. Freemasonry's legacy, Freemasonry's future. So June 23rd is a Friday. We're going to have early arrivals and registration. We're probably going to do some tours maybe around the DC area. We're going to do a dinner together. It's going to be buy your own meals that night. We're going to pick somewhere that's cost effective for everybody. We're going to have an agenda, more of an agenda to be revealed at a later date as we work through that. The second thing is June 24th, the next day. It's Saturday. We're going to have notable Masonic speakers, including illustrious Brother Stephen L. Harrison, including short presentations by John Ruark, Jason Richards, Juan Sepulveda, and myself. We're going to have trivia games with prizes. We're going to have Masonic vendors, the new guys, most likely not the same old catalog guys you get in your own lodges. We're going to have new stuff. It's going to be pretty cool. And fellowship. This fellowship is going to be unlike anything you've ever experienced. This is not an event being hosted by any lodge or any Grand Lodge. This is a Masonic event being hosted and empowered by you, the member. So we're there to kind of organize and set things up and give you guys some topics, but largely this is going to be members talking to members about successes and challenges. How are we going to do these things? We're going to put together tables of people to talk about things. We're going to go around the room. We're going to get answers from different people. We're going to have a giant mastermind session. It's going to be amazing, guys, and we're going to follow it all up with a really great evening. And all I can say is get the ticket now while they are on the cheaper end. As time gets closer, the ticket price will increase, and this is in order to fund what we've got going on. Now, the more tickets people buy, the more things we can reveal. Think of this as a Kickstarter, but without a campaign website. We are launching this. The tickets are $99. There's a $3.50 fee that PayPal takes into consideration here. So it's the early bird ticket for $99. So get your ticket. This is going to happen no matter what, and you're going to want to be there. It's going to be the biggest Masonic thing many of us will go to in our lives. That's how cool it's going to be. So I'll leave you all with that. I don't want to try to sell it to you too hard because I don't think I need to. This is an amazing, amazing opportunity for any Mason to go to the George Washington National Monument. And we're just excited to share time with you guys and really get on the level and start digging into our successes and challenges, talking about these things, and share time together. It's what it's all about, unity. So with that, again, check out the Masonic Roundtable Tuesdays at 10/9 Central. Check out our show every Sunday night at 9:30. You can hit me up on an email if you've got any questions or suggestions for the show at admin@wcypodcast.com. If you want to hit up any of our team, you can hover over the old About tab and click on the WCY team. You'll notice that my email is there. You can contact Frater O, Adam Thayer, Brother Harrison, Brother Dobrow. I need to put up Bill Hosler's information as well, but he is also working with us. That's it, guys. I hope you have an amazing week. With that, until next week, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson.